told me that he believed that volcanoes were to blame for global warming, not humans. I knew this couldn't be right, so I did some research. The Hawaiian Volcano Observatory claims that globally volcanoes on land and under the sea release a total amount of 200 million tons of CO2 annually. The CDIAC reports that global fossil fuel CO2 emissions via human activity were at 26.8 billion tons. My point is this. Though environmental issues like global warming have been crammed down our throats, there are many things that the average individual does not know. One such issue that I believe is pertinent but often overlooked is the overconsumption of water. Water conservation on the individual level is comprised of simple solutions having a tremendous effect on environmental issues. I'm going to explain to you the close relationship between water and energy, show you that overconsumption is a national dilemma, and persuade you to employ some simple changes. Now, overconsumption of water is a greater factor in global warming than most perceive because of the energy used to process it. In a blog by Building Green founder Alex Wilson, roughly 4% of total power generation is dedicated to the treatment and pumping of water. For cities around the country, this is the largest single user of electricity. Also, the Natural Resources Defense Council claims that the collection, distribution, and treatment of drinking water and wastewater nationwide release approximately 116 billion pounds of CO2 per year, as much global warming pollution as 10 million cars. So, water consumption is aiding in the emission of CO2 into the atmosphere. But that's the entire country. I'm going to show you how one fixture in your home, the toilet, can have a greater impact on environmental issues than you realize. I will show you how excess water from each flush is equally as damaging as driving an SUV. Now, I used the EPA's greenhouse gas equivalencies calculator to find that an SUV driving 10,000 miles per year at 18 miles per gallon emits a total of 4.89 metric tons of CO2 per year. Now we have the pre-1994 toilet that flushes 3.5 gallons and the post-1994 toilet that flushes 1.6 gallons. This gives us an excess of 1.9 gallons of water. Now the EPA says the American average is 6.8 flushes per day. So if we take our excess water that we're wasting by owning an old toilet and convert it into the amount per year, we get that we are wasting 4,715 gallons per year. Now the Department of Energy says that it takes 652 kilowatt hours of power to process 1 acre-foot of water. So if we take our amount of water that we're wasting per year and convert it into the power used to process it, we get that we use 9.4 kilowatt hours of power. Now the Bloomberg report says that 1 megawatt hour translates into 2,249 pounds of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere. So we take the power used to process our old toilet water and convert it, we get that we're emitting 10,780.4 pounds of CO2 per year by owning an old toilet, or 4.89 metric tons. So my point is, the CO2 emitted by owning an old toilet is completely unnecessary. I personally calculated these numbers, as can you, but they're not enough. America needs an attitude adjustment. Overconsumption is a way of life in America. In 2012, National Geographic published its 4th edition of Greendex, an international survey researching the extent to which consumers are trending toward environmental sustainability. Of the 17 countries surveyed, the U.S. scored the lowest Greendex score, and U.S. consumers had the least guilt about their environmental impact. Furthermore, only 50% of Americans polled were concerned about freshwater shortages, as compared to 86% concerned with the cost of energy and fuel. I believe that the American mentality of not being concerned about overconsumption is a symptom of our culture. We are the country of for the people, by the people, and our country's leaders have never truly left us to fend for ourselves during times of economic crisis. I believe that this gives us the mindset that resources will always be plentiful. Also, we have competing mass media sources. Some downplay the threat of global warming and some back the scientific evidence. Either way, we shouldn't be relying on the television to educate us. Now, I realize that not everyone understands how water treatment can translate into CO2 emitted into the atmosphere, but everyone knows the meaning of the word waste. Whatever the contributing factors are, there are some solutions to ease the problem. For some people, the idea of conservation draws the idea of tying oneself to a tree or other such drastic measures. However, water conservation on the individual level can be quite simple. And the first step to making a difference is just believing that you can. Then become more mindful of wasteful activities. This can be anything from fixing leaks around your house to turning off the water while you're brushing your teeth. I also urge you to use the Greendex calculator on the National Geographic website. Greendex 2012 found that there's a notable discrepancy between those who consider themselves green and the percentage of actual green consumers. I calculated my own Greendex score. I got a 45, 1 point above the national average. I would have thought myself greener than that, so see for yourself. See how green you really are, then start making small adjustments in your lifestyle. Finally, if it's possible, buy fixtures that specialize in conservation, such as a low gallon per flush toilet. They cost anywhere between $100 and $200, and if you do the math, a 1.6 gallon per flush toilet will pay for itself in a little under 16 years. However, next to the facts on emissions, this seems like a pretty small price to pay. Water conservation can be in the form of small changes you make in your home, keeping tremendous amounts of CO2 from being released into the atmosphere. It is important to know that the process of water production is not only related to the availability of the water, but also the massive amounts of energy used to process it. It is also important to consider that natural resources such as water that we take for granted may not come back to us as easily in the future. I admit that I didn't fully understand the process of how water comes to my home just to be flushed away. I believe most people think that way. So I ask you to do as I did. Learn about it and begin using water conservation tips to turn this national trend of overconsumption around. Thank you.